Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Good afternoon. This is Marty Kaiser with our Friday Real Estate Tidbits podcast. Hope everybody's looking forward to a great weekend and has had a great week up to this point. It's always fun to come on after we just had a closing. We just closed one of our transactions, actually finished about a half hour ago. It was a really nice home in Hunters Creek, and the nice thing about it was a very fun transaction. Both buyers and sellers were thrilled at the conclusion of the transaction. And that's what we endeavor to do. We try to eliminate any stress, any last-minute drama. By being proactive and being prepared, we try to make it a great resolution for both parties, especially in today's market, where unfortunately some of my fellow realtors, their communication skills could lack improvement. I always try to communicate with people well before they try to reach me so that I'm always one step ahead of the game. At the same time, it makes everybody's life easier, my life, my customer's life, the lender's life, the title company's life. And I work with a great title company, Carlos Fernandez with Equitable Title. He does a great job, very professional. I just don't have any issues. Carlos, been working with him a good bit of time now. And there's other great title companies too, but they make a big difference. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them and let you know why I'm in a little bit of a good mood today. On a couple other fronts, I'll start off with a quick blurb about sports. The Western Conference playoffs are concluded. The Oklahoma City Thunder handled with consummate ease the Minnesota Timberwolves 4-1. So they're in the NBA championship round. They're just waiting for the winner of the Indiana Pacers and New York Knicks game. The Knicks defeated the Pacers last night, and so the Pacers are currently ahead 3-2. And they'll be going back to Indiana for Game 6. I expect Indiana to complete the series, but it's been a close, contested series and a good spectator view. Regardless of who wins the Eastern Conference, it would be a tremendous surprise to me if Oklahoma City doesn't prevail as the champions. They've actually had one of the best seasons in basketball history, both in terms of wins. They won 68 regular season games and only lost 14. And their margin of defeat against their opponents has been on a record pace. So it would be quite a surprise if they don't win. For Oklahoma City fans, they've got a young team, so they could be a dominant presence for a few years. The other teams in the league have a little catching up to do. The main thing that they have that some of the other teams don't have is they have a very deep team, meaning they have some good solid reserves, and they play extraordinarily good defense. A lot of teams in the NBA, their defense at times can be lacking, and defense always keeps you in the games even when your shooting is up. So anyway, keep an eye on that series. The championship series will start sometime next week, depending on when the Pacers-Knicks series ends. Real estate-wise, we are in our summer season upcoming. The market is definitely going through a transition. What do I mean by that? Well, as previous podcasts recently have indicated, we're getting more listing inventory, which is great for buyers because they have more choices. On the flip side, buyer activity is not increasing like we normally would see this time of the year. And that's due in large measure, in my opinion, to number one, the interest rates are still, a lot higher than they were a couple of years ago. They're ranging between 6.5% and 7%, which is about double what they were a few years ago. And based on all the economic forecasts, I don't expect that rate to change demonstrably over the next 7 months. Secondly, with all the unusual things going on in our government, with the tariffs and all the other things, there's a lot of hesitation from folks about buying or selling real estate until they feel more stable. Besides having the instability, there's kind of conflicting prognostications for the economy. There's one large segment of economists that say we're going to go into a recession due to the tariffs and some other things. And then there's another segment saying because of the tariffs and whatnot, prices are going to increase at a significant amount. So we're going to be in an inflationary cycle. So you can imagine if you're a consumer or business owner and you're worried about prices going up and you're worried about sales coming down, not a good combination. So we'll just have to wait and see. My advice is if you're a buyer, it's an excellent opportunity to have some selection of inventory without as much competition. For a seller, you have to really think long and hard and require your realtor to give you a very thorough evaluation of your property, very frankly, in terms of what is your property's true value based on all these variables that I mentioned. What things, if any, do you need to improve in the house to make the house more marketable? And just a general critical overview of your property. I can tell you in today's market, first impression and initial pricing are crucial. One thing that's been true over the years and is not going to change, typically your first 7 to 14 days is when your property's brand new on the market and it gets more activity. So that's why it's so important to have the first impression be impeccable. And secondly, have your pricing be very competitive. I tell people to be proactive and not reactive. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you go through and do the laborious things that I do, doing the analytics and the number evaluation and the comparison month to month, year to year, et cetera, you're seeing a lot of prices of homes sitting are on the decline. And so when I say be proactive, not reactive, if somebody else in your neighborhood lowers their price, and then you say, gee, the neighbor lowered their price, I better lower my price, you're being reactive, so you're not staying ahead of the trend. However, if you're proactive and price your home accordingly before the neighbors make their changes, it's going to make your home stand out. It's going to make your home be more competitive. It's going to make your home sell quicker. And probably it's going to make your home actually sell for more than if you had been a reactive seller. So these are things that are really important, and I can't stress these enough. It's always a sensitive topic when you're talking to sellers because everybody knows of one situation where a house sold for a great price and they say, well, gee, my neighbor Harry sold for this and my house is equal to or nicer than his, so I should sell for Y. Well, first of all, when did Harry sell his exactly? What was competing with Harry? And how does Harry's house truly compare to yours? Everybody tends to have a little bit of a biased opinion of their own house, so you need an unbiased evaluator. What are some of the things that go into play in terms of pricing? Well, how new is your roof versus another home? How new is your air conditioning versus another home? How many improvements do you have versus another home? How depersonalized is your house versus another home? How is your lot location? In other words, not only the size of your lot, but the privacy. Do you have rear neighbors? How big is your garage? Do you have a 2-car, 3-car garage? There's just a lot of components that affect pricing. Is your house located in a noisier area that maybe some people don't like? There's just a lot of things that a knowledgeable, experienced real estate broker can advise you on the pros and cons of those things. And all those things impact your price. Now, some of the things that are subtle things are what is the seller's situation. For example, there was a home last night, wasn't one of my properties, but it's a nice home. It's a waterfront lot. And it started off at what I call it a fair price. They were asking $750, and it was a premium waterfront lot. It had been on the market 15 days. which is not a huge amount of time, but obviously it's enough time where you can see the trends. And they lowered the price $50,000 to $699,900. So that tells me a couple things without knowing anything about the house. Number one, they're probably not getting the activity they expected. Number two, maybe they're getting some criticisms they didn't expect. And probably number three, they're extremely motivated, meaning that whether it's a financial situation, whether they've already relocated, whether they're buying another property, for one or more of those reasons, they need to sell their house. So they're an example of somebody that's being extremely proactive. They wanted to stay ahead of the curve. And maybe what they're hoping with their strategy is because they've priced it at an extremely attractive price, they'll get multiple offers and maybe they'll end up getting above their current lower asking price. So when you're looking at that house and you're trying to price another house, you have to kind of look beneath the surface and try to ascertain as to some of the reasons for that strategy on that house. But there's a lot more than meets the eye. And so these variables need to be taken into account. I feel you're going to see an extremely competitive real estate market in Central Florida over the next 6 to 8 months. We're far enough into our spring, almost summer season that we can tell that the buyer activity is not increasing to the level of previous years. So that needs to be taken into account, and your marketing needs to reflect that. I know you'll hear from some people, oh, I'm so busy, I can't keep up with everything. Well, everybody's busy. There's different degrees of busy, and everybody has their own definition of what busy is. But I can tell you from experience that a lot of people tend to embellish because obviously they'd rather people feel that they have more business than they can handle, and that's why you should use that realtor because they're in demand and they're going to do a superior job for you. And that's true if all those situations took place. But a lot of times when I pull up other agents' business compared to their rhetoric, you'd wonder if it was the same person. But that's just a thing, and everybody likes to, what I call, do some puffing. Like when people are running for political office, they have this grandiose itinerary of all the changes they're going to make. But for the most part, a lot of those changes are not realistic. The Congress is not going to vote for them, or they're just not going to get done. So they can say, hey, I told you I wanted to change this and this, but it wasn't my fault that it didn't get done. Now we're in kind of a political situation where some of the things that were promised, they're trying to get done to the extreme, to really the point of breaking the law. They're kind of feeling that our executive branch is above the law. So regardless of whether judges put an injunction on it, say what the action is illegal, a lot of these things aren't being followed by the executive branch, which is kind of scary. You may or may not agree with the changes, but if you think it's okay for one person to have total authority, then you want to live in an authoritarian society, meaning that you'd be in a situation like Russia. And this is not rhetoric, this is fact. If one person doesn't have to follow the laws, then we're losing our democratic principles. And relating to that, I don't know if you've read some of the articles recently, both in the Sentinel and nationally, but in Florida in particular, there's been some interesting cases from twofold. Number one, people are getting pulled over on our highways for a minor infraction. Maybe they had tinted windows, maybe they changed lanes improperly, minor traffic violations that would result in a warning or a ticket. And when some of these people are getting pulled over, and this is all Florida I'm talking about now, when they ask for documentation, they don't have the documentation that the law enforcement officers want. So if they're what they look like undocumented folks, they're getting arrested. No due process at all, and they're getting ICE involved, and they're being sent all over the country in these, for lack of a better term, makeshift prisons. And these people a lot of times don't have a lot of money. They haven't done anything against the law from a standpoint. They haven't committed any crimes or anything. They may be here on an approved temporary status, or maybe they have gotten in here illegally. And I'm not in favor of people entering the country illegally and having carte blanche to stay forever, but I am in favor of due process. And all the courts have ruled that this is not according to our laws, that you just can't arbitrarily arrest people like that for these minor violations. They're not criminal offenses that they're doing. But this is happening, and the court systems are being tied up, and judges almost universally are saying that this is not proper. But right now, it's an uphill fight for a lot of these folks that get apprehended. And can you imagine you're in a foreign country and you just get arrested, and you're not even kept in the same state, and maybe you don't have a lot of money? And I know some people are saying, well, they shouldn't enter the country. They're here illegally. That's true. They are here illegally, but they still have certain rights, and they're still human beings. So that's one example, which to me is very disturbing. The other one, which is probably worse, is some people are being called to the court for hearings before a judge to address their status. So a lot of these folks are going before the judge, and they're showing whatever communication they're having with the judge and whatever kind of paperwork they have. And a lot of these times, these people are here on protected status, but they don't have visas or anything. They're just kind of in a waiting game. You've probably read a lot about a big group that's like that are Venezuelan people, because they feel that their lives would be in danger, and so they were given asylum for protective reasons. Well, these people are going to the courts, and the courts are extending what they're doing now. They're saying, okay, we're going to basically put your case on hold, and just keep an eye for any notices and comply with whatever request you have, but you're not doing anything illegal at this point. And ICE agents are attending these court hearings, and when they ascertain people under this category, they're arresting them, pulling them out of court, no due process, and again, they're being confined in or shipped either out of the country or to these confinement areas. So what's going to happen is, when this starts becoming better known, these, what I would call people that are here on protected status while they're awaiting adjudication of their case, they're not going to report to court. So once they know that if they go to court, they're going to have ICE agents waiting for them. I mean, it's pretty scary. I can only imagine if I had friends or relatives in that situation. And what a way to live. You're kind of living in hiding all the time. It's one thing to protect our borders. I think most people are 100% for protecting our borders, and you can certainly say we need to improve those techniques. We also need to hire more people in our immigration department, because immigration's very backed up, and that's why a lot of people in these protective statuses have been this way for years, because immigration doesn't have the funding or the personnel to do this. It's just like our IRS has gotten reduced recently, our Health and Human Services. A lot of these necessary services to ensure the safety and health of our country have just been arbitrarily chopped with no alternative to improve these things. I wish I didn't have to incorporate some of our government missteps recently, but I think it's important, because these things all affect everybody's quality of life, and they impact our economy. They impact real estate. They just had a thing about a construction site in Florida. They had 100 of their workers arbitrarily taken off by ICE agents. So again, regardless of your points on immigration and such, they're probably working for a company in the construction field, and now the company can't do their job because they don't have these workers. And I know a lot of the common sentiment is, oh, they're working for peanuts and that's why they're getting hired. Well, that may or may not be true, but if there was all these American workers that were ready, willing, and able to go to work, then they'd have a selection of labor folks. But unfortunately, a lot of Americans don't want a lot of these jobs. It's just like more of these labor-intensive jobs, like people out in the fields picking fruit and harvesting our vegetables and stuff. A lot of times, those are not Americans, and probably a lot of those folks are undocumented. But we don't have the labor. So we're going to start seeing on the supply chain shortages because of these policies that we're doing. And again, I'm not for people being here illegally, but we have to have a concept. You have to transition. It's like if you're driving an automobile, you wouldn't go from 0 to 200 miles an hour in 6 seconds because that would be highly unsafe for you. So it's one thing to recognize a problem, but it's another thing to impart common sense solutions that are A, going to be practical to initiate, and B, are not going to decimate the way our country operates. So that's all for today. These are some things to think about. I hope that you guys feel free to write in or call me. I can be reached at 407-595-9700. My email address is marty@floridasells.com. I'd love to help you with your real estate needs or just chat about it or the economy. I've got some great houses for sale, so call me about that too. And this is Marty Kaiser out.